the mission that God gave to save the entire world, in the past, in the future, all humanity, it was dependent on Joseph doing his job and doing it really well. That's a pretty weighty responsibility to provide, protect, and save and raise that Redeemer for humanity. But Joseph was the man for the job. And you know, he was tested too. There was a hit put out on his child. Very dangerous. And he's pretty much, kind of a nobody in first century Palestine. And he's got to save baby Jesus and Mary in the middle of the night, and then be able to make a living wherever they escape to. Joseph really had a big mission, but he did something that we should all do. And he didn't have to take very long to do it, but he had to discern. And so this is something that we need to think about. When God is giving us something to do, when we want to know what is his will for us right now at this time in our life, we do need to discern. We need wise counsel. We can get good resources, like anything written by Father Timothy Gallagher would be very good. We go through some steps before we discern to try to make a right decision. And Joseph did too. And so let's take a little walk through his discernment process and see what we can glean and understand. There's two things, two strains of thought with theologians regarding Joseph's response to the news that Mary is with child. One, and it's the one that most of the world, the Protestant world, actually adopts, is that Joseph is thinking that she's been unfaithful. But because he's a just man, and of course he's met Mary, he knows her, and after being with her, how could you condemn her? It must have been just, if that were the case, it was a struggle in his heart. But he wants to put her away quietly because he doesn't want her stoned. He doesn't want her publicly humiliated and her family shamed. He doesn't want to do that, so he wants to do it kind of privately. And maybe they'll move to another village and people will think she's a widow, or who knows what that scenario might have been. But that's one thought, that he thought she was unfaithful and that he was going to put her away that quietly. The other thought, and this is one that Father Calloway brought forward, that some of the fathers of the church had adopted as well, is that Joseph believed Mary right away, and that he knew she was carrying the Son of God, and that he believed he was unworthy to raise and care for and be that father. He was just carpenter, and that it had to be for somebody else. God had to have some other plans. This was beyond his pay scale, that he wasn't worthy. And so there's that thought. And there could be something else that we don't even know. But for whatever reason, no matter what case it was, he was afraid to take Mary as his wife. This fear we know he had, because the angel tells him, Joseph, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. And so his discernment process was, of course, his response, and that came with thinking about the situation, but then being receptive to the answer, which came to him through a dream from God, through an angel. So when we ask the Lord for an answer, we have to be receptive to what he says, even if it isn't what we thought we should do in the first place. Joseph thought he should put Mary away because that was the best course of action for her safety and to get and he wasn't up to the job, and whatever the case may be. But when he prays and he receives his answer in the dream, and it's not the answer he wants, because it comes from God, he doesn't hesitate. And we know this because this happens more than once. He's the man of dreams. He receives the dream to take Mary as his wife, so he does. He receives the dream to get up and take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and he goes immediately. And then, of course, to return. In the dream, he's told that those who sought the child's life are no longer alive. You can go back. So he responds immediately. And his immediate response, once he knows, is critical to saving the life of the child. life of Jesus. Regarding discerning what the Lord might be asking us to do, Father Gallagher's books would be very helpful to go in depth on this, but there's a few things. There's some criteria. One, is there a need for what it is you think the Lord is asking you to do? Does the thought of it, even if it's hard, does the thought of it fill you with joy? And third, are you capable of doing it? Not, do you have the skill set presently, but could you get it? Do you have the raw materials? I mean, could you do it? Often God will qualify you. Like if you say, well, I don't have the education. Well, maybe he'll provide it. Or I can't do it because, well, that might be your own limitation. So that's a whole nother area of discernment. But those are three things about discernment that we want to, is there a need in the church? Does the thought of it bring me joy? And could I become capable if I am not capable of doing it right now? When we have given it time, we've had good counsel, we've prayed, we've given it sufficient time, and we think we have an answer, then we just need to do it. Because the answer often is not complete. The Lord does ask steps of faith. And often the first step is really critical before you can even be shown the second step. It shouldn't be illuminated until you've gone past through a certain formation, a certain process. He might show you like the beginning and the end and maybe a step or two in the middle, but everything along the way might not be shown to you. Here's another question for you. Could you get it wrong? Well, yeah, you can get it wrong. And you know what? A lot of the saints did too. That initial decision wasn't quite right or wasn't correct. For instance, Maximilian Kolbe, when he was in the seminary, he discerned that he should leave and he was ready to tell the Father Superior. He was sitting on a bench outside his door with an appointment to say, I'm leaving. And he had discerned it, and it was a good discernment. His country needed him for for his military genius, actually. He was very smart. And so he discerned that his way to serve the Lord was through helping his country. But before he gets into his appointment, something happens and he ends up not keeping the appointment, and the Lord makes it very clear, I want you to be a priest. But, he got it wrong. And then like Francis of Assisi, in the dream, the Lord says, rebuild my church. And the Lord, of course, meant the whole church. It needed reformation from within, right? And he starts building the church at San Damiano, one stone at a time. Was that wrong? No, he just got it. He didn't get it right when he heard the Lord's voice. Was that necessary? Maybe. Maybe physically building the church at San Damiano was important to his formation. So sometimes when we get it wrong, really it's just a step along the way of that journey. So the point is, don't be too hard on yourself or a perfectionist, or you'll never get started. Unlike Mary and Joseph, all of humanity isn't depending on you getting it right and doing a good job of it. But somebody does. Somebody's depending on you to say yes to the Lord for whatever it is that he has for you in your life. Whether it's in a sickbed, joining your suffering with Jesus on the cross, and then seeing souls in heaven that wouldn't have been there otherwise. At Fatima, Our Lady told the children, many souls go to hell because there's no one to pray and make sacrifices for them. Or that business venture where you were going to create a Christian culture in a business that doesn't normally have a Christian culture, and infiltrate the larger culture that way with how you and your business operate. Maybe that's going to make all the difference for somebody in a family and then generations to follow. You don't know. Jesus, Mary, Joseph, we love you.